People are at a distance. They're not in the same room, and they're writing chat messages, and they're also working on some kind of problem. And then this final, well, it's the fourth one. I just ended a project called LEAD, a European project where we had about 5 different European countries participating, and we studied face-to-face and computer-mediated discussion, where each person was on a computer, but they were in the same room, in the classroom. And that was quite interesting. They could vote, for example, anonymously, and children that maybe had trouble talking in the classroom were able then to participate with this method that included use of the computer, but in the classroom. So all of these situations are interesting depending on the pedagogical goal that you might have as a teacher. And finally, there's another really complicated one, because you might imagine that you can combine all these different kinds of things. And that's in the last study that I'll show you with the mechanical engineers that I work with in the workplace. So this is not in the school. This is in a company where they design cars. And so you have people in a meeting, and there's one person that has a computer, and that's pictures being projected on the wall, much like today. And then they're discussing with other people at a distance who are sharing a computer, and they're all talking and trying to come to a decision about a product that they're all designing. So you can imagine there are all kinds of different situations that vary across space, the type of tool or computer being used, and time. Okay? Now, what are the kind of challenges that we have as a researcher in the computer-supported learning or work area? Well, we have multiple and diverse possible sources of data. So the first question we have is, you saw in the last slide all the different kinds of situations we could possibly have. Okay? So how do we choose to record? What do we choose in the first place? How do we make that decision? Well, I argue in this talk today that we have a theoretical framework, so we have a way of thinking about the world, and we have research questions, and we have an analytical method that we choose to study our data with, and all these go together, or they should go together, and that's what we'll talk about. And that allows us then to choose the kind of data we will look at. Okay? So we end up with really extensive, complex, multimedia data sets. We can have video and transcriptions of dialogue, and we can have what's happening on the computer. We can have writings on pieces of paper. We can have the instructions the teacher gave, what the children did in the end. All of this, we need to study it, okay? So how do we go in there and get what's important, okay? One of the things that a lot of people in computer-supported collaborative learning do is they want to identify patterns of specific interactions when we're looking at the process. Because these specific interactions, like argumentation, for example, that Nancy will talk about, are shown to be important for learning. Okay? So, and a lot of times also we have different tools that we're using, knowledge building tools, for example, the wiki, different types of working, and we want to try and see, well, how does this tool help kids to learn, okay? So we want to relate these interactions and these tools with the learning outcomes of the children, okay? Or the quality of their productions. Sometimes it's hard to measure learning. In physics, for example, I worked for many years with a physics didactician, and in an hour's class time, you can't do a pre-test and then a post-test and figure out if the child has learned physics in that hour. Okay, sometimes it takes, many weeks or months in a classroom to see if the child has learned physics. So that's also one of the difficulties. So here is the model that we propose. I'm working on this model with one of my PhD students who is in computer science. And it's a cyclical model And we need to start somewhere, and although we know that when we do analyses, new research questions can come out of our analyses, here I begin the cycle with a research question that has been defined. Okay? And so, remember we had all those different CSCL situations. We need to capture data in there, so that's the next step. And then we need to collect data. Now, the distinction I make here is that we need to choose then what data we want to actually analyze, okay, within that great big set of stuff. And then we interpret our current collection, okay? And if we're happy with our result, then we say, okay, we're done, and we write a high-impact journal article that everyone reads in the field, and we make a big impression. Or otherwise, we're not satisfied, and then we start again, and we keep analyzing, and we create new analysis artifacts, and we work on our data again, and we loop around like this until we're happy. Okay? So what I'm saying here is that our theoretical framework will give us the type of research question that we can ask. You can't ask all kinds of research questions in all kinds of frameworks. Okay? Sometimes it doesn't make sense to ask a question, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And then we use an analytical method here to do this data collection and analysis. Okay? And the first question we ask then, well, is our analytical method compatible with our theoretical framework? And I'll give some examples where sometimes it's not really compatible. Okay, and that can pose some problems. And then secondly, sometimes we can use the first method and we get some results, and then we can use a different method and get some more results on the same corpus, like the same children that are discussing in the classroom. We look at that data with different ways, different glasses, okay, kind of. And sometimes these different results can challenge each other. They might not be exactly the same type of results, and we might think, well, the second set of results makes me think about my first set of results, and then I can move forward in thinking about collaboration. Now here's a way to illustrate the point, what I mean when you have a theory and a method that can be incompatible. I'm not sure if there are any psychologists in the room, but there's oh yeah, I guess there is. So here is if you are in experimental psychology, okay, this is your paradigm. Okay, so what that means is that you have a hypothesis and you want to test it. Like you think that in the classroom, if I do things in this way, then children will learn more or better or some, and then you have a way of measuring that. Okay, that's your hypothesis. But in order to test that then, you need to have two different conditions. You need to have a condition where, and this is kind of a simplified version for you, you have a condition where, like say, you want to show that small group work is really good. Okay, so you have kids in small groups, and then you have individuals, and you check to see the difference in learning at the end in the small group and in the individuals, and then you can see which, how much, whether the learning occurred to a greater extent in small groups or individuals. Now you can't really do that, but it's just an example to show you, okay, what I mean by that, two different conditions. Okay, and so that allows you then to either confirm or infirm your hypothesis. Does it work or does it not work? So that's what you have to do. You can't, and that's why I have a cross on that, you can't just film students who organize their own learning. It's really interesting to do that. It would be interesting. You can learn all kinds of things about filming students in the classroom or after school when they're organizing their own work. But it's not going to help you decide about your own research question, will a certain condition increase learning gains? You see what I mean? Okay?